Welcome to Voices of the Valley. The first season of Whitewater Valley Presbytery's podcast explores the theme of justice. Episode 2 features Pastors Sandy and Martine Garcia of Amistad Church of Fort Wayne.
Well, grace and peace to you wherever you are and whenever you are listening. And welcome to episode number 2 of Voices of the Valley, the official podcast of the Whitewater Valley Presbytery.
It is a real joy to have Sandy and Martine Garcia with us for this episode. Martine and Sandy are part of the planting pastors of the Amistad Church in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And they bring a wealth of experience and a deep passion for inclusive, innovative, and incarnational ministry.
And we're fortunate today to have the opportunity to learn more about their unique mission and how they are serving their community with energy, intelligence, imagination, and love, as we say in those Presbyterian ordination vows. Martine, Sandy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are really excited about our talk today. To start out, can you tell us about yourselves and how your vocational path have led you to Amistad and Fort Wayne, Indiana?
Well, I've been an ordained pastor for 29 years. And I originally got ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in Southern California. And I grew up in that denomination, but part of my family, because my grandfather became Presbyterian at the beginning of the 20th century in Mexico. So I grew up in the Disciples, but during the summer, we had Vacation Bible School in my church 1 week, and then the next week in the Presbyterian Church. So there was a lot of back and forth among the two denominations. But I always have had a passion for start new churches. And after I finished college and I came to the U.S., to Claremont, California, I've been very involved in starting new congregations. But I personally started a couple of congregations in Southern California. But one thing that I have discovered through my journey that you cannot just start feeding the spiritual side, especially in the Latino community, because there are so many other needs, the immigration part, the justice issues. I have been a driver, I have been a babysitter, an electrician, I have been everything that you can imagine. Because I always have been a tent maker. So because Hispanic churches, especially when you are trying to build up, you can have 300 people, but you have families that are sending money to their countries of origin. And because of that reality, they don't have enough money to support a pastor. And then remember, many of the families have low income type of jobs. And that's why I think we do some other things aside the ministry, aside the spiritual part. And that has been the core of my ministry and the ministry of Sandy and myself. Mm-hmm. We always have had some other things running besides that.
Yeah, and I come from teaching. So I was a teacher for 22 years with Los Angeles Unified School District and then Pasadena Unified and in California. And so when we came to Fort Wayne, I was working as a district instructional coach with the Fort Wayne Community Schools. So I know all too well the needs of families that you can't just be in the classroom teaching. You are sometimes a babysitter, a grandma, an uncle. And so we came here to Fort Wayne. I was still in education, but then I got a call, you all know the call, to go into ministry. So I am right now in seminary. My second year, finishing my first semester of the second year. So I have 3 more semesters to go. And I am enjoying a lot. I'm in supervised ministry. Right now, I've learned a lot from Martine. How to preach, things like that. If I have a question about the history of the disciples of Christ or whatever PCOS say, he tells me, because I'm learning all of that because I grew up Catholic. Well, let me tell you a quick story. Martine and I met on eHarmony. We met on eHarmony.
Oh, cool.
And so I thought he was Catholic, So when he told me that he's a pastor, and I was like, how dare you be on a dating site? How could you do that? You're not supposed to be married.
How judgmental of you.
And so my eyes were open because I grew up thinking all Latinos were Catholic and all white people were Presbyterian or Protestant, So that was.
I don't think you're alone in that. And so this is a wonderful story for all of us.
Yeah, it totally opened my eyes, and I never realized. And I think my call to go into ministry probably happened earlier than 2 years ago, because I remember when Martine and I were first dating, we went to an Episcopal church, and the priest was a woman, and she's amazing. And I was sitting there in the pews thinking, wow, we can do that too. I never dawned
That's
on.
beautiful.
Yeah, as a woman, it never dawned on me what we can do. So that's so basically, I've done pulpit supply. I feel like my seminary has really prepared me to get in there, and my teaching has prepared me for the practical, the what does the community need question, because that's what happened when we went to Amistad. My first thought is, let's tear these walls down, not physically, but
Yeah.
we want to go out beyond the walls, and we search what's in the community, what are the needs. And that was the teacher in me. It wasn't just this child sitting in my classroom. It's like, what is going on in your life that is beyond the walls of the classroom? So that's my attitude with anything that we do. What are the needs? How do we help? What's around us to support, those needs?
Yeah.
I think that is so true with ministry and teaching. There is a bridge there is a connection to that, where it's not just about the job description. And certainly ministry is like this. Any pastor knows that, yes, you go to seminary and you learn the theology and in the exegesis and all of that, but you also are the electrician, you're looking for a plumber, you are the counselor, you are a personnel director. There's so many facets.
Because even creating a school, we want to start a daycare at Amistad. So I know all about teaching. You can throw me in a kindergarten, I'm fine. But learning how to start a daycare is like, what? Oh, that is.
You become a contractor and a link to the State Department guidelines. And So what led you guys to Fort Wayne?
Yeah, I was born and raised in LA, in Hollywood, actually. I was born in Hollywood, so all the kids in schools would be like, oh my God, Hollywood, like, yeah. But so I was born and raised, you're right, the weather, the mountains. I'm a trail runner. So getting into the mountains was amazing. But honestly, we had been talking about leaving Los Angeles prior to hearing about Amistad, because at least a couple of years prior to that, because of the cost of living. I was also an accountant in my past life before a teacher, so I kind of think budget. But then one day Martine says,
in the middle of the pandemic.
What about Fort Wayne?
Right. I think that's important to say that you guys came in 2020.
We came in 2020, yes. One day Martine says, in the middle of the pandemic, he's like, what about Fort Wayne? And I said, Fort Worth? He's like, no, Fort Wayne. So I looked this thing up, on Zillow. I've never heard of it. And I'm looking at the houses, and I'm just like, oh my God, yeah, let's go look at Indiana. And I thought, I thought Indiana was like the Antarctic, always snowing, and white people everywhere. And so
We do have that.
well, we came to Fort Wayne. We came to Amistad and we were speaking in Spanish. There were Latinos. There's Mexican restaurants that are authentic, a little, holes in the wall. And Martina and I are just looking at each other like, where'd they all come from? you know?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So, and then there was a very interesting attraction in terms of where the church was located,
Yes.
the possibilities of doing things in the building. And when we saw all the possibilities
It's a big building with so much possibility. And the people, we have from in the beginning, El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, and the service and white. We had the service in Spanish English. And so we were just like, we fell in love with it. And but it wasn't just the cost of living. We realized soon that the community was just, it has so much potential. That as a teacher, I love creativity. I like to create my curriculum. I like to create things. So when I see that, I'm just like, I fall in love with that possibility. Yeah.
It's really cool.
It was, yeah. And so we said, yes, we're coming. And we came in 2020 in an RV. We drove from Los Angeles all the way to Fort Wayne.
It's interesting how the journey you took through so many states and kind of a winding journey is a metaphor for sort of the winding and multifaceted vocational paths you've both been on. And you both hinted at it already. But as you know, the first season of this podcast, Voices of the Valley, the theme is justice. And I see justice being a primary concern in what we've already talked about with Martine talking about, much of the income of congregants is going back to home country in many of Latino congregations, and Sandy, you in education, getting intimately familiar with sort of the effects of injustice in society on your students and their families. And what you're doing now, it is not just church work, traditional church work. And so I'm interested as a multicultural ministry with a significant presence of people who've recently immigrated to the U.S. What does the work of justice look like in your community now and into the future?
I think that as a minister, you are called to be a voice of justice and a voice for the voiceless. At least that's what I've seen from the beginning of my ministry many years back. And I remember one time in the first church that I was pastoring, I received a call in like around 6-7 o'clock, and got the phone. No cell phones in those days, so I got the phone in my office, and it was from the local school. And perhaps that particular event was kind of the beginning of a long journey, seeking for justice for all, because it was a school, and it was the school telling me that it was already 6 o'clock and no one has picked the children of this family. And I was listed without my knowledge as one of the people who they can contact.
Wow.
They couldn't pick up the kids.
Yeah.
So I called the grandma who used to live in another area eastern of Los Angeles in the county of San Bernardino. And I told her, I don't know what happened. I received a call from the school and they are saying that I'm listed as one of the ones to pick up the children in case of an emergency. And the reason that happened is because their parents were arrested by immigration in a raid that they did in the place where they used to work. from that day on, that opened my eyes, and I always have become a voice for immigrants in particular, because these are hardworking people. It's not that they are committing any crime. Working on the garment industry in Los Angeles, and they got arrested because of that. The children, U.S. citizens, they were at school. Children all disoriented because they didn't know what was happening. Grandma was able to come, took the children, and eventually the parents were released, thanks to the other pastors that I met, and then we started advocating, and they were able to got some lawyers from some of the congregations, and that particular event has kind of draw the path that I have taken through my ministry. So when I came here and I started seeing a number of things. The number one thing that we started doing, Sandy and I, is connecting with some of the elected officials. And our representative for the city council for that particular area of Southeast Fort Wayne, they told us that that's an area that doesn't have a local hospital. So in order, if something happens there, they have to transport people to the other side of downtown. So then there's no health care, mental health facilities. There's a lot of, all the bad statistics are in that area in terms of schools, in terms of one of the schools there, it's from the bottom to the top, it's, I think, the third worst school in the state there in Fort Wayne and in our area. So we couldn't just cross our arms, and that's why we have had a number of things besides the immigration work that we have been doing. We have had
even giving diapers.
Yeah.
You know, we've had two families that they go to food banks, they get food, but they need diapers for their baby. And it's like, those are so expensive. So, you know, I'm even tinkering around with an idea of having a diaper bank or something. Just a thought that I was talking to Marty, you know, as these things happen, we start to think about, you know, other things that we can do in the community. It's just it's like an onion. You peel one part of it, it's formed underneath it. That said, though, I mean, I can tell if I speak for Martin, but I know we're in the right spot because we love what we're doing. That's always I tell every teacher that you have to seriously love where you are. Yes, it's intense. Yes, it's stressful, and you get really exhausted. But it's like you're not there for the money. You're not there for the, you know, benefits, whatever. You're there because you really love it. It's a strange kind of way of saying what a vocation is. But
You're listening to Voices of the Valley, a podcast of Whitewater Valley Presbytery.
The other thing that we have been checking, it's some of the other realities, like, for example, some of the immigrants' families.
Oh, yeah.
They just come to Fort Wayne with whatever they are wearing.
Yeah.
Because immigration takes all their luggage and destroys it. And so we have families who came, like last week, I came to a trailer park to connect with one family, and it's cold. It's in the 20s. And the family doesn't have heater in the trailer. They don't have gas. The clothing they have is like for the summer. And they just came like a month ago or something. The mom has been sick because of the cold. And I saw the little kid with like shivering and inside of this RV. So you are thinking why they don't have gas. And in many times it's because the gas company doesn't allow people who don't have an ID or I mean, because they are technically legal, they are not undocumented because they cross as asylum seekers. But sometimes some of the families don't know any of these details, so they don't know when they start getting asked by the gas company if they have any ID or if they have anything, and the gas company doesn't even know anything about these asylum processes. So when we are talking about justice, you are not just talking about the immigration side. You are talking about a number of things that are built up in our society that doesn't allow some of the poor to really advance, and they even ostracize them because they think that they are undocumented, that they are not worth it to be here. And then you have all of these situations that even these kids don't have clothing. We had a family last year in the middle of the blizzard that we had here, that we had 40 below with the wind factor.
Wow.
And they said to me, Pastor, the the fridge is warmer than our kitchen. The whole
Goodness.
kitchen froze. They said that they left plates on the sink, and the next day they were covered with ice. And then their furnace broke in those days, and the owner, instead of trying to fix it, he only gave them heaters, electric heaters, which is very dangerous because they could have produced a fire with all those heaters in the house. And they were popping all the night. They were popping the breakers because it was too much energy. So they were popping the breaker, and they were freezing in their house. So you see these type of cases, and it's because sometimes the gas company or the electric company don't want to provide them with the services, which is very unfair. And it's not that they want the energy for free; they want to pay for it, and that's when you have to think of justice on all these, and justice and equality for families that are the only sin they have committed. So that's why I get so angry when I heard some politicians that are taking advantage of these, and try to use families that are trying to seek for an opportunity in their lives, and sometimes they are even persecuted in their countries, and that's why they are coming. It's not because they just want to take advantage of the
Right.
system or anything like that.
Yeah, it has to be so bad in their country that they have to risk their lives to try to come here with their children, that you know, and then to have to go through what they have to go through here. Because I talked to somebody about that. You know, they didn't come here because they hate their country. They love their country. They were happy. The weather, you know, their culture, their family. In some cases, even their pets get left behind. You know, so it's like, and we've had stories of the jungle that the Colombian, they were standing in the river because the river was up to their necks, waiting for the water to go down. So they had to stand in this river for the whole night with their children on their shoulders. And in the morning, the river went down, but they couldn't feel their bodies because of the cold. And they still had to scale these mountains, and there's, you know, there's so much death out there from just getting into a situation where you're going to have to do more than an ultra marathon, you know, walk through deserts, cross rivers. And so it's like, but they're not leaving their country to come here because they want to, they love it. They're leaving their country because of death. They could die in their country. And so, but they're risking their lives leaving their country to come here. So you know, it's insane. It's just hearing some of these stories of them speaking to us, of telling us what they've gone through. But then there's also the beautiful stories that we hear, like that family in the house with no heat that now has their papers, right? and
They are buying a house.
and working. So they're contributing to the American economy. So for people who think that they have a free ride, they don't.
One of these families the other day, one of their children broke his arm at the school, and they take him to the hospital, and they have to pay cash. I was telling them, why don't you take him to the ER? And they said, we did, but the ER didn't want to see him. They said to us that we needed to go to another clinic where they could do anything, something to the arm. So those injustices happen even when they are violating the law, when they don't want to see the kid, because by law they have to see him, and especially because he had an emergency. It's not that it was that he had a cold or anything. He had an arm that was fractured. And so that's why whenever I heard that, I'd really get really upset. Whenever I heard that they are just coming to take advantage of our system and things like that. That's not true. And that's why Sandy and I also are involved in an effort to seek for a driver license for all here in the state of Indiana. And we are engaged in different things as much as we can. Plus, not only giving charity, but training these families so they can, we offer a seminar on how to buy a house, how to have a budget, how to open a bank account, and things like that. And this is because we are partnering with other agencies. It's not that Sandy and I were teaching that, but we have the experts coming. We have banks coming. We have partnered a lot with Super Shots here locally. And we are able to bring vaccinations to children and families and all that without any cost. So that's part of this whole system, that you want families to receive a holistic impact in their lives.
Wow. And thank you so much for telling these stories. And one thing that does is it, I think, opens people's eyes to the subtleties. You think of injustice as these overt acts of discrimination, and while they are that, there are also seemingly benign laws that have downstream effects for people that are very vulnerable. And so we, as church leaders, and you in pastoral ministry, we're so thankful you're telling these stories, so we can become more aware, those of us who are in the position of making those laws and rules, to think about those downstream effects. So the work of pastoral ministry, as you're demonstrating, is so complex, and you're agitating, you're community organizing, you're feeding people directly, you're doing all this type of work. And so we're so appreciative of you telling the story of Amistad, of what God is up to there. And again, we're so appreciative of the time and the wisdom you've shared with us today. I think we could probably talk for another couple hours.
Yes, I echo that as well, Bo. I think there are a lot of people in the presbytery might have heard of Amistad, or maybe not. I think, as someone who's recently gotten involved with council, I didn't know a lot about your ministry, and it's amazing what you're doing. And I know people out in Whitewater Valley want to know about you. But I think after, hearing these stories, I think churches want to know what they can do to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how could listeners support and or partner with the work that you, Sandy, and Martine are up to in Fort Wayne?
I think it's different ways. The easiest way that we can say is financially, and supporting some of those things. Some of these families, they come And it's so funny that the immigration law is designed in such a way that if you want to get your permit to work, you need to pay $410. Well, these are families that just arrived,
Made it here.
don't
Yeah.
have any money. In order for them to work legally,
Yeah.
they need to pay $410. And things like that, which doesn't make any sense. Because then people are complaining, especially some politicians, they are complaining, well, these people, they are working with fake papers and all that. Well, who is pushing that?
Right.
Because of the way that the law is designed. So yeah, sometimes we have to help families with some of these fees and things like that. But I think even volunteering, we have a building that it's nice, but needs a lot of work.
Yes, it does. The building has things in it that we need to remove and carpet and
Mhm.
update all kinds of things. We have a website link that there's a place to donate.
Mhm.
They can Amistad AMISTADFW.com.
Amistad FW for Fort Wayne.com. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing that we are always seeking for, it's things as common as coats, sweaters, especially during the time of
Diapers.
winter,
Yeah.
diapers. People can organize a drive for those
Yes.
type of things.
So if a church, for example, wanted to do some sort of a project for your community, they could contact you about having some sort of a drive, a diaper drive, a coat drive, and maybe even creating a relationship, no matter where you are in the presbytery, create a relationship with you of some specific need.
Yeah.
That would be, you would be very open to that.
And if
Yeah.
anyone out there wants to donate a new HVAC system, I know a
Yes.
couple
Oh
of
my God.
pastors who would very
That's
much,
right.
and
Yes.
it would go towards some great ministry.
For a commercial building. For a
Yes.
Yes. This conversation has been so inspiring and informative, and I know people that are listening will be so interested in learning, about more about you too and Amistad. Thank you so much for making the time of your
Yes, thank
very
you.
busy schedule of spreading the good word about what God is doing in and through you. As we end our conversation today, would both of you be willing to offer a blessing and a charge for our listeners?
Sure. We'll do it both. So English, Spanish.
Okay, so I'm doing the English.
Beautiful. That would be wonderful.
Can I start, sir?
Sure. Gracious God, we are blessed to be here speaking about our ministry in Fort Wayne.
Amado Dios, estamos agradecidos de estar aquí en este ministerio en que nos has puesto en la ciudad de Fort Wayne.
And we know we could do a part 2 because there's so much that is being done. Your will is developing and growing, and it's just an amazing thing to see.
Y sabemos que podemos hacer una parte 2 porque sabemos que hay tantas cosas que pueden hacerse y que se pueden ver.
And I want to thank all your spiritual warriors who are here listening and are out there doing the good work of your will for their community.
Y te damos gracias por todos aquellos guerreros espirituales que están allá afuera haciendo el trabajo en la comunidad.
Each day, every day, we are blessing unto others.
Cada día somos una bendición para los demás.
We're grateful for that opportunity, Father.
Y te damos gracias por esa oportunidad, Padre.
And in Jesus' name, we pray that we keep going and keep going strong.
Y que en el nombre de Jesús podamos seguir adelante y seguir adelante con fuerza.
Amen.
Amén.
Amen.
Thank you so much,
you.
Sandy and Martine. This has
Thank
been such a blessing. And
Thank
we will
you.
continue to pray for you and look for ways to support the ministry in the coming months and years.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Voices of the Valley, and to our guests, Pastors Sandy and Martine Garcia of Amistad Church of Fort Wayne, for sharing their story and what justice looks like in their community context. We hope you'll join us for our next episode featuring Reverend Elizabeth Kaesnack Hall, a Presbyterian minister currently serving in a private foundation and supporting the welcoming and care of refugee families with a group of like-hearted volunteers. For our hosts, Reverend Bo Brown and Elder Jenny Hymack, and Presbytery support staff Dawn West, this is Craig Shaw reminding you to let your voice be heard.